Answer your question. What made you guys make Akali's passive the way it is with the ring attack, auto attack empowerment and all? Was it to make her more fun or give her counterplay? I mean, probably both. A lot of times, so here's another game design idea. Sometimes counterplay can make your character feel terrible. Sometimes if you do counterplay in the wrong way, your character just feels non-functional, and that's an L. It's not that counterplay is bad, but counterplay at the expense of your character being enjoyable probably hurts them in the long term. But a really beautiful thing you can try to achieve when you're making a character in a game like League or Valorant or Overwatch or Deadlock or whatever, in my opinion, is a character who has counterplay in a way that makes the character feel cool and the opponent feel cool. I'm not saying that's exactly Akali's passive. Akali's passive is probably just, at the end of the day, to give her like that more of an in-and-out flighty assassin pattern. She has a lot of interesting ways to proc it with her ultimate and her E. She can dash out of the circle and then run back in. And so it's to give her like, some counterplay in terms of an extended pattern, but also like really play off of the mobility in her kit. I think it's a very compelling case in that thing. But I have to wear the cat ears now? Okay, boss. One sec. So Akali's passive's probably got that going on. But I would say that I think a very virtuous way to design a character in certain cases is where you create a spell that has very real counterplay, so the opponent can play against and feel like that was cool, but has enough in the champion's hand or the character's hand to also feel like they can pop off and do really cool things. A classic spell in this design is Caitlyn's ult. Specifically when she's not just building a ton of lethality and casting it every 20 seconds. But if you think of the base idea of Caitlyn's ultimate, she sets up, she does this giant channel, and then shoots a bullet at you, and if your teammates don't block it, you die. And in those moments, it creates a lot of really big excitement for both parties. Caitlyn's like, okay, is it going to get blocked? Can I find situations where it won't be blocked? And P.S., you can find a lot of situations where it won't be blocked. And then the opponent is like, oh, dang it, I need someone to save me from this. Where's Caitlyn going to shoot me from? Can I get a tank there? Things like that. And so, again, when it's not in the super abuse cases of like low cooldown, 5,000 lethality, I'd say Caitlyn has a very strong counterplay and play kind of balance on her ultimate that makes her feel better for everyone involved. And generally, I think that's like a virtuous thing to do for characters, is find ways that they feel like they can pop off with their spells while also giving the opponent lots of ways to play against it. It's not always possible depending on the character. Like, as an example, most melee characters need a little bit more BS in their kits just to function, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean you can't like have spells that create these cool gameplay moments for both sides, and that's generally a win, I think, when you have them. And the risk you get is, generally when you're doing this, is the risk is you give a spell so much counterplay that the person using it feels like they can never actually use it, and that can be an L. There's such a thing as too much counterplay if you feel like, well, this is just for my opponent all the time. You need to create ways for people to actually succeed. An example of this with like a skill shot is, say you make a skill shot that's really easy to dodge, right? At a base level, that's like, okay, great, that's for the opponent, and the opponent's going to feel really good about dodging it. But then if you give the character ways to potentially make it hit, like let's say it's really good in corridors, or it's really good if they slow you, and P.S., the character has a slow somewhere else in their kit, things like that, that can create a really good thing where the character's like, oh, I have a skill shot, it's really hard to hit, and I'm going to think about ways I can make it hit, and then they're going to feel really good when they actually succeed. Whereas the opponents are going to feel great because they're like, their skill shot is hard to hit, which means I can dodge it. And there's going to be a lot of times where the opponent dodges it. And then because it's hard to hit, when they do get hit, a lot of times the opponent will be like, okay, it's hard to hit and I got hit, so I deserved it. And I don't hate the game. And I don't hate the character because that was a fair interaction. Of course I got hit. They landed their slow on me. I deserved it, right? And so you can create this like really virtuous feedback loop of opponents dodging a lot of things and feeling okay when they fail, and the user failing a number of times and feeling okay when they fail because of the situations that they can create where they can succeed and feel really good about it. And so that's something to think about when making mechanics in a multiplayer game. And again, though, the other note there is you also want a good deal of things that are just for the character. Like,
do I think it's good for the game that Flash has a 90% plus pick rate? Yes, actually. I think it's very, very good for the game. I think the game is meaningfully better for having Flash with a very high pick rate. 100%. If we were to make changes to Flash that made it picked less, the game would actively get worse. Because Flash is a cool spell that creates incredible high moments, both playing as and playing against. It creates cool things happening offensively and defensively. And it has an insanely high cooldown, meaning that there can be extreme variance introduced into the game purely because every single fight, not every person will have flash, which is not the case with things like, say, ultimates as the game progresses. Unless your name is Karthus, you're going to have ultimates for most fights. You're going to have a lot of the other summoner spells for most fights. But Flash basically says this is up sometimes. And depending on if it's up or not, you can create like really, really big differences in how fights play out, which is fairly good for the long-term longevity of League of Legends. Flash is incredible. The game is better for having it. Do I still make decisions regarding balance with champions you play or have bias on? Everybody has bias. So yes, I will still give feedback on things I feel are strong or weak, and I will have personal biases that go into those feedback and opinions, and sometimes, and I do my best to like make sure to check my biases on things, but it's kind of like a weird thing where it's like, if you make a character, you're going to be incredibly biased towards them, which can be like result in bad balance decisions, but also you're probably one of the people who knows them best, which can result in good balance decisions. So it's like kind of this question of, you have to be careful when, you know, a champion designer, like, say, wants to buff their character or something, because there's definitely going to be, like, some bias towards, like... one second. There's definitely going to be some bias towards, like, you know, they worked on the character. But at the same time, one of the people... one of the people who I would trust most to, like, know how to make a character feel better or something like that, or know if something feels bad, potentially, would be a champion designer on the characters they worked on, because they've, you know, worked on those characters for years. So it's like good and bad outcomes all mixed together. Does Pyke need the bonus health conversion because otherwise he'd be a better tank than an assassin? Yes. So the reason Pyke has that passive is because the support item system does not accommodate AD champions, especially assassin champs. And so, characters like Pyke and Senna need really, really weird scalers to make them function as a support AD carry and a support assassin. Pyke's kit could easily be a support tank, but that would be a problem because, A, if he's a support tank, he probably shouldn't have all that dashes and mobility, and B, he's way cooler and more fun as a support assassin. And so we give him the health conversion to ensure that he's not building the items that most people in his class would build, and instead is better at building, like, is moved towards the assassin item system. But a lot of it comes from there aren't items to support the AD type of character fantasies that you might want in bot lane, and so we have to do like pretty sometimes strange things to their kits to make sure they fit into that system correctly.